Welcome to By the Blade, the weekly podcast where we talk about the blade and blade arts, interview makers of the blade and teachers of the blade, and anything else we can think of. I'll be your host, Rich Fern. Today's guest is Datu Kelly Worden, founder of Natural Spirit International, Worden Defense Systems, the Water and Steel Camp, CQC Combative Concepts Raw, trainer of Special Forces and LEO, creator of the Travel Wrench, Silent Fighter, as well as a custom knife maker. Join me in a big By the Blade welcome to Datu Kelly Worden. Datu, how are you, and do you ever sleep?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's funny. Well, I used to do a lot of videos, and you know, everybody was buying VHS back then, and then DVD, and every once in a while you hear somebody's wife pop up and go, "Ask him if he ever sleeps," you know, or do you have any trouble sleeping? But a little bit of both. Gosh, I when you mention that, I think about my dad. How, of course, he was former military, that type of thing. He was up at 5, and he was didn't go to bed till 1, and he was up at 5. I mean, it's just one of those things. And you wonder oftentimes. You're supposed to get 7 hours here and do this. A little cat nap in the afternoon sometimes with the dog on my lap, or you know is enough to suffice. I like 20 minutes or a half hour downtime before I have to teach a class, and kind of a recharge. Yeah, I'm good with that. So yeah, man, I think I get enough sleep, not according to the medical industry, but according to how I regulate my time.
Right. And of course, all of these accomplishments have taken time. They've happened over the years. They didn't happen in a day, of course. In researching you, I was trying to find your school, and I found NSI and WDS, which is Worden Defense Systems and Natural Spirit International. Can you explain the difference in the two schools and how they actually
Sure.
work together?
Sure, sure. So back in 1980, I opened a gym with Sugar Ray Seals when he was still fighting pro. Kind of came out of a PKA style uh, fighting gym, but at the same time, we were in a ring, actually at the Tacoma Downtown Boys Club. The ring was, that's where Davey Armstrong, Leo Randolph, Sugar Ray Seals, and a lot of the Olympic boxers came from. I don't know. It's kind of a rundown area. The boxing ring had a canvas and ropes. But other than that, the canvas was duct tape.
Yeah.
Uh, that type of stuff. But it was more geared towards fighting, and then we integrated it into the weapons. It was an Ishinru base originally that transitioned into the boxing, and how that boxing kind of came about. We didn't want boxing gloves, so we took foam and created hand pads, athletic tape and foam, and just made open fingered uh, safety gear before there was safety gear. So, it was always a fighting method, and we were always engaged with different stylists, Taekwondo guys, Shorinru guys, Ishinru guys, um, and then boxers, and then guys that, of course, that could wrestle. So we were doing that type of method. And then in 1980, when I opened my gym, by that time, I'd already gone into some Shotokan and some Kajikembo, uh, and that was mainly because these were the guys that were training with us. Like, hey man, show us that form. Why don't you do form? What do you mean by your tricks? Like Kajikembo's got stick tricks and that type of thing. So they weren't necessarily one steps, and I mean some of the Kaji Kembo stuff is some of the meanest and brutalist and orneriest type of stick tricks and body conditioning, always pounding on each other. So kind of got used to that. I called the school United Karate Systems, because we were kind of unifying, and I was allowing different teachers to come in and teach at the class.
Yeah.
Have their own hours here and their own hours there. The boxers always had their own times too, but I just didn't feel that one thing represented it other than United Karate System. So that's kind of the old school. And then from there, it evolved in, after I got into the Arnis, combat Arnis and Shotokan under Kui Broka, because I wanted the combat Arnis. Kui Broka was one of Ernesto Presas's students. And of course, we all know that Professor Ramey was Ernesto's brother. And so I was doing the combat Arnis, and that's what drew a lot of these other systems to me, because they wanted access to the Arnis. And I really didn't need or want Shotokan, but that was the only way Kui was going to allow me to join his Arnis, so that I was part of both his school methods and that type of thing. So from there, about 2, 3 years into the Shotokan and the combat Arnis, still doing all our fighting in the ring, that type of thing. I met Ramey Presas, and I was just like, wow, this dude's a magician. And that's when I switched my system to natural spirit. And it was Dr. Yip, interesting guy. His father was a 18 weapons tam toy practitioner out of Hong Kong. His mother was a collaborative Wusu practitioner. Both of them were educators, college professors. His sister was the highest ranked female practitioner under Gogen Yamaguchi in the Gojo Ryu. And so it was a martial arts family. And the parents said, we don't care what you train in, but you must always respect the elders, and you also must always respect the tie. I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. And Dr. Yip ended up going into Taekwondo in Hong Kong. There was 2 schools of Taekwondo. And so those guys had to be pretty badass dudes, you would think, because, you're Korean rolling into China, and and you think that there would be some politics there, and I imagine there was a little bit.
Yeah.
But how I perceived it, the way Dr. Yip explained it, was the elders said, yeah, let them do that Gojo Ryu and that Taekwondo, let them get all that physical training out of their, or the out of the way, so that we can have time to ourselves. So let the kids play, the external arts, so to speak, and pretty amazing practitioners. But he would pay me to go to his school over in Gig Harbor and beat up his students. So I thought that was a pretty good deal. And at the same time, he was sharing with me Tam Toy 18 weapon stuff. So trained me in some bench, he trained me in some spear, trained me in some broadsword, and a little bit of straight hand Lohan striking skills, kind of like Choi Foot.
Okay.
So I was getting those type of things in exchange for, beating up the students. And they were all highly skilled, talented guys. And if anything, I just had an upper hand because I was so unorthodox. I wasn't stylish. I never claimed to be pretty. I just claimed to be like kind of ruthless and unorthodox. So yeah, it was Dr. Yip. Let me go back here. So I was transitioning, and I said, I want to change. Things are different here. I'm no longer United Karate. He goes, well, what do you do? And I goes, well, it's got to be natural. I'd had a couple injuries, motorcycle wreck, that type of thing, and just injuries. I did paint and body for, 20, 25 years. I was always on concrete. My knees were wearing out, doing body work, crawling around on concrete under cars.
Mhm.
And I said, so it's got to be natural, but most importantly, your spirit's got to be able to change. If it's just a little argument, my spirit's going to be one level. You mess with my wife, well, my kids, my spirit's going the different direction, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm doing doorman work or any kind of security work, my spirit's going to change. So it's got to be natural. It's got to be spirit, and you know, I really consider it a way of life because no matter what it is I'm doing, martial arts is already always primary.
Right.
So that's how natural spirit came in. He coined it Ji Yin Ching Sun Do. And I was like, well, you know, that sounds goofy as hell, man. I can't even order Chinese food. So let's translate that into English. And it's like it's nature's all, spirit way. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So natural spirit, and you know, if you're injured, you're gonna fight differently. You know, if you're pissed off, you're gonna fight differently. And so it just seemed like, you know, the natural transition, you know, and if you got a medical injury or something like that, boy, you're going to have to change that level of how you fight, how you adapt, and how do you adjust.
Mhm.
And that's how I wanted my students to be too. You know, take advantage of your attributes. Some guys are made for Wing Chun or grappling. Some guys are made for boxing. Some guys are just natural kickers, you know, and we need to adapt to that. It's very much American. One thing I liked about what Dr. Yip said was tradition for America begins where we are today, you know, and the pioneers, the early pioneers like Jesse and
Right.
Ed Parker and Imperato, C. Joe Imperato, you know, the Kajukenbo founders, and a lot of other guys. I mean, they're just American pioneers that started in the, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s. 50s, 60s is probably more relevant to where I drew my lineage from. And you know, so it just seems to be a natural transition into natural skill development, and again, adapted to your environment, right? You
Yeah.
know, if you never hit the street or you never out in mainstream public, you're hiding behind the mats and the walls and the security of a stylistic engagement. And, you know, since we were kind of like young rebels that were all blended together
Right.
um, and mixing our arts already, we were, you know, we were getting exposed to a lot of different ways to be beat up. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, anybody say, "Oh, I've been in 100 fights and never lost one." Well, you must have been fighting at the grade school, you know, because you know, um, it's a violent, hostile world, and or you don't have brothers and brothers friends like the guys I ran with, and you know, and I don't know. I think people miscalculate the fact that street engagements also circle back around into revenge. You know,
Right.
you beat somebody up, he's got a cousin, he's got a brother, your name's out there on the street. If you're a hometown boy, it's going to come a rumor or something. But shit just happens. It never stops coming, you know.
Yeah.
One of
Should
the
your
reasons nobody ever sees me drunk in public, you know, first of all, I don't drink now, but back
right.
then, you know, if I'm going to get drunk or high, I kind of kept it to my own business. You know, it's like I wouldn't be susceptible to being stupid in public.
Right. It's so easy to
Yeah,
do once you're under the influence, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You had mentioned your unorthodox style. I've got a note here about your Renegade JKD. Is that a philosophy that you have? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, Renegade JKD is a philosophy. You know, when we were developing, my instructor was a top Ipchen fighter, but he was always unorthodox. His mom was Filipino. His dad was a black dude that had survived the Korean War and the killing fields. And he walked the neighborhood. He lost his arm in the killing fields in Korea, but
Mm.
he walked the neighborhood with two dobies, you know, and that's how he conducted business around his house. So, and Mama was no fool either. So, um, you know, Ed Lewis was very well known. He started integrating, you know, before I did because he was a black belt teacher when I ran into him. I just had some pretty good street skills, and he enjoyed my aggression and my ideas. So I became his first black belt after 8 years. I mean, people were getting their black belts, and I was still a purple belt. I was a 3 year purple belt. I didn't matter. It didn't matter. He used to snicker and go, "Yeah, our colored belts keep black belts on us." And so there was kind of a band of us that ran. We were pretty popular in our urban nightlife area. Some people thought Kelly Worden was a black dude, and Ed Lewis was, or yeah, Ed Lewis was a white dude, but it was just the opposite. Sometimes they just didn't know. But so Ed was already talking about and thinking the way Bruce Lee was, and integrating stuff, just picking and choosing. Initially, before Renegade JKD came in, I called it Poor Boy Jeet Kune Do. And people are like, "Why would you call it that?" I said, "Well, we're not from California, and we don't have silver spoons, meaning we can't just drop what we're doing and go train with, Bruce Lee students, or, kind of do that thing." It was long, for us in the late 70s and the early 80s, it wasn't like this big seminar circuit thing.
Right.
So that was to get that integrated training methodology was really from inviting other schools to come over on Friday night fight nights. No cup, no mouthpiece, no control. You guys got it? And it wasn't, it was just that was part of the joke. But it was like, yeah, throwing kicks, throw to the ground, drag them through the dirt, whatever you want to do. We would change our fighting environment. We train out in the back and behind the gym. And our gym really wasn't a full padded facility. Most of our gym floors were concrete or hardwood. And we allowed throws, and we allowed takedowns. And, I think all the martial arts systems from the 60s were all fighting on gym floors or concrete floors, community center type floors. So, you knew how to fall, you knew how to take somebody down without dropping them on their head. And I don't think there was a lot of malicious type injuries. It was just hard fighting and hard sparring. But to get, so again, the Poor Boy Jeet Kune Do was, okay, we're adding new stuff, and it was more or less a joke, because we didn't feel that there was that much mystique to integrating and blending your art,
Yeah.
and to use the name Bruce Lee, and we were all intrigued by that, but we didn't feel that anybody was really accessible until, some of the Jesse Glover guys were exposed to us, and Ed Hart was Bruce's second student. So specific student of theirs. Well, actually, Joe Simonette, he's well known in the camp. Bowie's passed away, and so he was seeking out Ed Hart and Jesse. And he had a pretty big chip on his shoulder. People say I'm cocky, but Joe was really off the chart.
Right.
And so I bumped into him at a Sato seminar. He wanted to come down and train with me, and I introduced him to the silent fighter dummy because he was really intrigued by dummy stuff. And we would get our tips and ideas for JKD based off of articles. Oh, look, they're doing Savat now. Oh, how's that work? Da 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 da. Now they're doing Salat. Oh, how's that work? Where do we find the guy? So it's kind of like mirroring and doing research. Well, let's find out what Silat's about. Let's find out what Muay Thai is about. Let's find out what Eskrima is. How's that different? Eskrima different than Kali or Arnis? And so we were kind of doing that. And since I'm here in the Northwest, we're right at Fort Lewis and McCord Air Force Base, and then Bangor Naval Station. So we had quite a bit of diversity guys rolling in. Actually, Mr. Armstrong's Ishinru school, those guys all came in from Okinawa and was did Armstrong. And so it was kind of a main drop-in spot. And as long as we maintained our political correctness, we did stay Ishinru for a long time until we made that transition into what would Ed called nomad or Yaoman nomad. Yaoman just means nomad in Cantonese. Again, I think Westerners kind of get caught up in the fact that uh, it better sound Asian, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
and I kind of chuckle about that. Actually, me and Keating have that. Why would a Marine Corps um, martial arts system run by Westerners name their system Gung Ho Chuan? You know,
Hmm.
I mean, really? And I have one longtime student and friend. Um, and a lot of these guys become students, but I bring them in more as associates because they're students, but they're not going to last out because they're innovative. They're looking for their own pathway. So it's easier to make them an associate and then benefit by what they know by having them teach your students that type of thing. And then when it's time for them to go, there's no hard feelings. It doesn't disrupt my group per se because he was always an associate. He really wasn't a direct lineage student. You give him the respect to let him line up if we're doing a lineup. And there's a story to that.
Okay.
That's a real valid story, as far as how you line up. How do you regulate authority in your group? It's like, well, hey, everybody spar, and then at the end of the night, you line up where you don't want to be. You line up to the right of the person that you think you could kick his ass if it's something like that. But kind of in that way, right?
Mhm.
It's mutual respect is almost a handshake and a look in the eye. And if
Mhm.
you've already worked out together, you know that guy's just a little bit more serious about shit than you are, and that type of thing.
Right.
But yeah, through that, the Renegade JKD, um, I just I just coined it. Like I said, went from Poor Boy JKD into Renegade JKD, and by that time, I'd also met Ted Lukai, Richard Bastilio, and Inosanto, of course, and Larry Hartzell, and you know, I trained with Jesse. Jesse into my group, he would come to and do the workshops and the seminars. Ed Hart was my personal friend and communicator. He was kind of ill and he was a recluse, or as he'd say, a recluse. So he didn't go out much. Uh, Talkie, I was able to meet with Talkie, um, made him a silent fighter, um, more of a guy. Never was my teacher. I would always call him a mentor because we'd sit there and talk for 2, 3 hours about what it is I was doing. And he was always intrigued the fact that I was doing knife and I was doing stick. And he was really intrigued by the weapons and then the staff, um, and then improvised weapons. And of course, the travel range and, the fact that I was training military. So he was just intrigued with how raw natural spirit is. It's a spontaneous art. How can it not be spontaneous when you have so many different people? I-5 martial arts. We're right on I-5, so you ain't like you can hang out in the mountains and you'll see a new guy sometimes. No,
Right.
it's like every day is new guys wandering through, inquisitive guys. Like, hey, yeah, uh, just wanted to come by and meet you, and then kind of rub elbows, feel you out, that type of thing.
Hmm.
Had motherfuckers come in and go, hey, I just want to feel your energy. Well, just getting ready. I just closed the morning class. I'm going to preschool with my 4-year-old daughter, and really don't feel like getting sweaty. Oh, I just want to feel your energy. Next thing you know, they want to touch hands, engage you, and smack you
Mm,
like a sucker punch. And next thing you know, you're brawling around in your damn gym when in essence you were just going to preschool. And we got this little attitude thing going on.
yeah.
So yeah, weird shit happens. And again, being on mainstream martial arts or mainstream um, I-5 corridor.
Main Street America.
Again,
Yeah.
yeah. And guys rolling in, just got in from Okinawa, just got in from the Philippines. Guys, all the military guys are coming in from everywhere.
Yeah.
So, so it's kind of weird like that. So that can have a tendency to make you a little bit like, hey man, what the fuck do you want? And it kind of
Right.
gets, I ain't here to bow. I ain't here to kowtow, that type of stuff. Uh, like to be respectful because you want to learn as much as you can. You want to see the diversity and you want to have that open book attitude so that you're not missing out on something that would be beneficial to your students.
Right.
You know? And, yeah, but through all that, it is, I mean, JKD or Jeet Kune Do is a theory. It is a principle. Jesse Glover himself said Jeet Kune Do died with Bruce Lee. Because, and I don't know what the rest of you guys are doing, but it ain't what Bruce was doing.
Right.
That type of thing. So he had lots of things to say about that. Um, Hard to duplicate conceptual views. One thing I say often, and there's quite a few guys that it could apply to, but hey, if you're so concerned with mimicking, you know, Bruce Lee, just think how good you'd be if you mimicked yourself. Meaning, if you allowed your natural instincts and your attributes, like a boxer, you know,
Right.
a boxer don't go, oh, I want to be like John L. Sullivan. I don't think that's going to happen,
Yeah.
not for very long,
Right.
So, or a wrestler, a really good wrestler. They're not going to try to duplicate somebody else. They might grab a specific technique or a principle or see or feel, meaning adapt. They're literally, it's boxing is Jeet Kune Do if you wanted to look at the raw essentials of it,
Right.
except for, you can't add these new tools that you've seen somebody else apply. Wow, that's really cool. I wonder if I could do that.
Yeah.
And, I think just people just make too much uh, out of wanting to be somebody else. They're like, damn, Imagine if your old lady, you guys are together and everything else, and every time she came in the door, she said, "Yeah, I met this guy. He was really charming. I want you to be more like him." You know,
Right.
so our relationships are based off of that appearance of what martial arts is. Oh yeah, he was doing circles and he was a great dancer, and you know, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
that's to me, that's how simple, you know, life is. And isn't life like Jeet Kune Do? You're working, you get laid off, something's happening, something changed. You still got to pay the rent. You still got to pay, your bills and all that. So life is about adapting
Yeah.
and spontaneity, and so
One of my favorite Bruce Lee quotes, I actually can't quote it verbatim right now, but the essential of it is do not try to discern the outcome of the fight. Just let go, and that's where the flow comes in,
yeah, of course, yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. And again, it's your natural progression and your spontaneity, that type of thing. And,
Right. You said something a minute ago
yeah,
that sparked something in my mind. I was speaking last night with somebody about you never know who the other guy is, what he's got, what he doesn't have. I know a little bit about this story, and maybe you could share it with us for a little bit of a lightness. The late Dr. Suk Mukhan Used to hang out at your school and just watch until finally
Yeah,
one
sure.
day, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Suk Muk Han. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, acupuncturist. And actually, he was uh, in 1929. So he was Korean, hanging out in China. And 1929, I lose my teeth in a bar fight. I go to jail. I get out of jail. I go back to bar. He loses his teeth. I go back to jail. He. And, you know, um, but yeah, he called it judo, is what he did. So really what it was Chinese shui xiao. I might pronounce that differently. Like I said, I can't order Chinese food, so I don't know. However that goes, right? But yeah, he was just an amazing guy. He would stand around in front of the gym. They lived behind. The whole parking lot was covered with herbs. Where he was, his wife would go out with other Korean women, go find mushrooms, go find uh, ferns, all kinds of herbs and roots and stuff like that, and they'd dry it, and then they had their whole network where they'd share it. And he did his acupuncture in the back, nothing that I knew about. But one morning or actually evening, I'd messed up my uh, herniated my disc 5, 6, and 7, so my arms were kind of numb, and I was really having a hard time. He's standing in front of the gym, and he's like, "Why you don't move?" Because I always move. And I said, "Oh man, my hand, my arm. Oh, well, you come now." I said, "Come where?" And he goes, "Come back in the back." And so I did. I'm doing acupuncture. So he did cupping. He bled me out uh, with the cupping. So he had these looked like a cigarette lighter uh, with like 50 or 100 gold needles in it, and he'd slam that where there's stagnant blood or bruising or no circulation. So he'd hit you with that, 10, 15 times, open up a lot of holes and put a cup on it, and then draw the blood out, that type of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, he's quite the quite the wizard as far as acupuncture and herbal treatments and stuff. And then he'd give you some kind of pellets or something. And, the only English on it on the label was for falling off horseback. So I figured that was a pretty old formula, time proven. And yeah, and within about 3 treatments, I was in Vegas refereeing the WKA U.S. heavyweight title bout. Actually, me and Cecil Peoples were in charge of the ring. Joe Corley was there, Bob Wall, Kathy Long, and just a lot of Maury Smith, of course, was there. Just a lot of practice and booing and jeering me, and that type of shit. It's usual thing. You're the referee, but that's one thing people don't realize. If you're a referee and you're at a pro card like that, the cameras are set up corner to corner. Usually, you got the boxing commission, you got the judges. Think about all those people. You got the cornermen, and then you're in the middle of that ring trying to separate two fighters, not trying to block the camera, not trying to block the cornermen, not trying to block the boxing commission, not trying to block. Uh, you kind of see the issue there. So if
Yeah.
you're aware of all that shit, how is that being a referee in the center? You are evasive mobility, positional alignment, positional control, visual awareness, distance, timing, range, and at the same time, you're trying to keep these two guys from kicking each other's ass, and the other 12 people that are part of that, keeping them kind of monitoring their, in this case, just their visual awareness, but that visual awareness is also a potential in a barroom fight to where you're regulating or monitoring their visual ability to engage,
Right.
that type of thing. But yeah, it really is like room clearing, and you're aware of everything that's going on when you go. So,
Hmm. Yeah, you
and
mentioned
a
it
lot,
earlier, situational
yeah,
awareness, and that's actually
yeah,
a subject I've got for deeper into our discussion here. We spoke the other day, and you mentioned counseling to other students, etc. And I just want to mention that, the first time I ever spoke to James Keating, a huge weight was lifted off of me because I had never been able to speak of my feelings about the knife, what I felt about it since the tender age of 4 or 5 when I decided I liked the knife, I guess. And, he understood me for the first time. And when you mentioned counseling, I seem to get that a lot from Jim when we speak. And, in speaking with you the other day, I got the same feeling. Can you talk about the counseling that you do with your students? Is it similar to just letting them know it's okay to be doing what you're doing?
yeah. That pretty much is it.
Yeah.
Gosh, let me see. It just, this kid kind of came out of nowhere here. I'm gonna see if I can find um, a conversation. His dad's 80 years old, and he's never been able to make peace with it.
Mm.
And since I've lost both my parents, and actually there's 6 kids in the family, and just me and my oldest sister are left. So
Wow.
just lost my older brother.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, in Western society, I don't want to blame it on Christians or you know just spiritual and religious belief that these are huge losses. Well, we need to celebrate the what they brought to our life, even if a lot of it was despair.
Mm-hmm.
They taught us how to open up enough and to learn how to shield, and that those are all part of the learning curve. And if we don't assess it while it's happening and then relate it to how other people do it, it's like I feel that the more we understand and the more we can reveal or expose ourselves to the challenges that other people are facing, then we're going to just absorb and be impacted by those same levels of emotion without ever having a way to wade in,
Yeah.
to how do I get exposed to those emotions, those feelings, and so we got to release ourselves. We got to become vulnerable enough to understand what somebody's going through, and then try to find a correlation or relativity to it. And then once we do that, we can, kind of circle it back and allow ourselves to go open ourselves to the students or the guys that are coming to us and asking us about, you know, geez, I had this situation and, it's really, really eating me alive. Just don't know if I can deal with it, that type of thing. And let me see. I just lost my older brother. And he's probably
Wow.
one of the reasons I'm a tough little bastard. I I started getting tough when I was little. Um, but anyway,
Yeah.
I says to this guy, "Hi, Steve. I read your response on my post where you referenced your dad. He'll be 88 years old. You're still pondering resolving emotional memories and negative issues. For whatever reason, I have been placed in a position to offer my insight to many of my students. I believe any insight I have garnered is from paying attention and trying to be honest with those I communicate with. Logically, it's about forgiveness, acceptance, and relativity. Spiritual strength is where you find your understanding of balance. My dad was a field medic in World War II. He was really fucked up with what he experienced. Um, Removing the bodies of men and women and children from torture chambers, brutal deaths. He never spoke about it. It was stories other veterans shared when we were not supposed to hear. Um, Growing up, he was the youngest of 13 children during the Depression in Kansas. He ran away when he was 13 years old and worked his way traveling to the West Coast. Um, got to got to California, joined the Navy at 15, lied about his age, tall, leathered up country boy, that type of thing. So he was coming out of the European theater. Again, like I said, he became a field medic. He did the Navy, did his stint, and then he joined the Army. And that's. So he had two birth dates in the VA. But so as he was in the military, in the Army, he became that field medic. And during that time, he also got tuberculosis. But coming out of that European theater, after all the death and haunting memories, he suffered tuberculosis. So survived in the iron lung, for quite some time.
Wow.
And we pretty much lived on government cheese. That's what we got. VA veteran made $600 a month with 6 kids. That type of thing. But a lot of what he went through, he'd leave the VA hospital and then he'd bring home a couple veterans that probably didn't have a home, and they stayed in the extra bedroom, slept with my aunt, whatever, that type of thing. But so all through that, that's stuff that we're being exposed to, and so he don't know why his dad, was what was going on. There was no thing as post-traumatic stress
Right.
being analyzed back there. And if the guy's 88, he probably wasn't getting the medical care, medical attention, acknowledgement of some of the things that he went through. He could have been in Korea. He's old enough to have been in Korea, and Vietnam. So there's, geez, man, life and death, shit that we live in between, and then how that affects us or impacts the rest of our family. It might be hard to even have a conversation for the dad and the son. I mean, I'm 73, my son's 50 something, and yeah, I wasn't Mr. Compassion. It's easier for me to talk to other people's children than it is for me to talk to my own. Just different things and different things. I mean, it's hard for people, hard for us to tell people how vulnerable we are.
Yeah.
I have to say, last thing I teach anybody is the spirituality of the art. First of all, I don't want to lead somebody in a direction that is, kind of like Jeet Kune Do, all theoretical, processed information, now coming from how I perceive it. So, you give them edges, you give them hints, and you give them tips on things that have happened to other people that have some relativity to it. And so, theologically, or we're all are kind of drawing from our mixed bag of life experiences, and your ability to counsel or console with it is how much of that information had you absorbed and to what level, and then can you relate to it, how can you expose it. So kind of like martial arts, if you look at how Mr. Keating and myself have been exposed to all these different martial theories and principles, no matter how we step out on the floor, there's chances are I can add something that you were unaware of in movement in general. You might be the great stylish practitioner, but you never realized how instinctual you could be or natural you could be in your movement and your mobility, or how a rising block is now a cross face because I got you in a down or guard position, that type of stuff. It's just, when you're connecting systems, you're connecting life. And, and if you've only been exposed to hillbillies or cowboys or inner city dudes, you know, and again, that's kind of the benefits of training in a multitude of different cultural arts, because all those cultural ideals and principles, and spiritually, again, here we go back to death, um, where now you treasure these things, as, as opposed to, I just got to cry, I just got to boo-hoo, I lost this, I lost that. But how much did that person empower you?
Yeah.
Even if they empowered you in negative ways or perceived negative ways, they prepared you for something that you wouldn't have been prepared for if you wouldn't have been close to that anger, that you know those negative energies that they went through, and somehow they shared that with you. So it really is, counseling is really about life experience, and then how you can share that without, like martial arts, without dictating that this is the way, asshole, pay attention, I'm trying to tell you something. Well, you ain't gonna get it. And how many times, I mean, now you got Cobra Kai,
Yeah.
the head of Cobra Kai telling you that's the way it is, because that was his experience, as opposed to, Miyagi going, well, these are some of the things that I have seen, and you may have experienced that too, and then this person dealt with it that way, and this person deals with it this way. How could you come around, so I mean, counseling is educating people, and then at the same time opening yourself up to be compassionate or have some passion for how they feel, and then give them an opportunity to bounce it off you.
Yeah.
I'd say, you're trying to open their eyes. So, well, have you ever really thought of how your 88-year-old dad really feels? And, who does he get? That's one that I had to, really put on my brother and be careful about it, because, when he experienced the old man coming back, he was younger, and they had always had that, let's go fishing, son, let's play ball. And then the old man comes back, and he's just beat to death. He's experienced, holding men, taking a puff off the cigarette with them. That was the last puff they had, and they died in his arms. And
Yeah.
fuck, who does he get to blame? And then, like I mentioned, he was the youngest of 13 kids during the Depression. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, on a fucking farm. And I mean, our great 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 grandfather was one of the founders of naturopathic medicine in the United States. It was Dr. Henry Merton, but his real name was Silvartha. His father was a Hindu, Osage Hindu. He came. He married an English duchess, and it was Raja Mohan Roy. He was one of a founders of the East Indian trading companies. And when he married this English duchess, he exiled to England and had a son. That kid came to the United States and married a native Osage Indian gal. And that's how the next generation of us kind of came about. And um, yeah, just crazy catches. I don't go into the family history and stuff very often.
Sure.
Almost everybody in the family's gone, so not really rehashing it much. But you can kind of see how all the absorbing, again, back to Jeet Kune Do.
Mm-hmm.
Jeet Kune Do is literally a way of life. Absorb what's useful.
Yeah.
Something falls out from under you, adapt and go with the flow. I mean, how is that all? That's why martial arts is a way of life. And, it's not just fighting, it's surviving without fighting, I mean,
That's the
shit like
ultimate.
that.
Yeah. On my
Yeah.
journey, since it started in a serious manner, I've been doing it on and off all my life, but I started back in 13, really dedicating myself to the arts. And I'm amazed at how much it has reshaped me, rewired
Yeah.
me. It is a lifestyle. I mean, it's easy to say, and it sounds like it's esoteric, like, you're Pai Mei on the top of a mountain there, But no, it's not that.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
use everything we learn in everyday aspects, from survival to even in the kitchen,
Yeah.
if you want to get silly about it. But yeah, what started the arts for you? Was it initially, I'm young, I want to do something, this looks cool, or maybe you were getting beat up a bit and you just done with it?
Yeah. All of the above. Again,
Okay.
man's a disabled veteran. There's 6 kids.
Yeah.
We were eating out of government cheese, and I mean, can't hardly remember all the weird, uh, you know, bags of oatmeal, and
Yeah.
I mean, eh, well, big cans of Spam,
Yeah.
that type of thing, and holes in my shoes, holes in my clothes, hand-me-down clothes. Like I said, the old man came off a farm in Kansas, and he's here in the Northwest, disabled veteran, can only do so much. So kids make fun of you,
Right.
and so yeah, you are fighting. Well, I think a boys club card was $3. It was also about 4 miles away, and every fucking 6 blocks is some other little bastard's turf. And
Yeah.
you're trying to ride your bicycle through that turf without getting your bicycle stolen, without getting chased,
Yeah.
and
You got to run the
no
gauntlet.
doubt, no doubt, yeah, you're running the gauntlet, and we all have to go to the same. We're all going to the same boys club, so even if you got past your gauntlet, they're going to see you somewhere at the boys club. Trying to play football, trying to play basketball. Oh, you think you can box? Okay, we'll see.
Right.
And then no matter how you clear that, you still got to get back. You know, well, we know where the little motherfucker goes now. You know, and you're always a target. See, kids were the kids are the real ninjas
Yeah.
of the world. You and me can choose not to go to Safeway because we can see the little gangbangers hang out there. The
Hmm.
kids don't get to have that option. They have to be the covert operator no matter how you play it. They got to play the candy ass. They can maybe play the tough kid. They can play their I'm afraid of that guy card. They know how to pick their, the tough guys that get respect. They can be the little jokester around them, and they have now kind of a executive protection dude that thinks you're a cool kid,
Hmm.
and they'll protect you. Or they target you. They're like, no, I don't like that little bastard. Bobby, go beat his ass.
I've
So
experienced all of that. I mean, I've had
yeah,
guys line wait for me.
exactly.
They're like, "You have to go through here, or else you've got to go 5 blocks out of your way." You know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then
Well, yeah, that's that counseling. You are absorbing what's useful, and that then you tell this individual. Now you take that childhood experience and you cross reference that, getting to go see those girls at the dance club, but you got to make it through the parking lot.
hmm.
You got to make it through the wall by the pisser. You got to go past those motherfuckers over there. Yeah, shit.
Right. Yeah.
There's 6 of those motherfuckers, and you and 2 of your friends showed up, and they know you're out of town. So they're protecting their neighborhood like a virgin fucking sister, and that's their bar.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you just draw, and then these are simplistic experiences that you can transition into a more complex, diverse, like scenario situation. And if you're good and you're a good people watcher, you can see all that shit happening. And you
Yeah.
may be able to rescue somebody. You may be able to rescue a chick who you can see that's being harassed and hassled, and hey, Julie, what's going on? Her name might not even be Julie, but you just intercepted that kind of conflict that she was trying to evade and avoid, and did it with enough strategy that you got her out of the situation. And hey, who
You
knows? Maybe you'll get
intercepted
laid
her.
that night. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
I think this is a great segue into speaking about situational awareness. I think that's our first step in all self-defense and just living in general. It saved my butt many, many times, whether I'm slamming on the brakes or deciding, no, I'm not going to stop at this little bodega in Bridgeport, Connecticut at 10 o'clock at night, you know?
yeah,
Can we speak to that a little bit about how
yeah.
important it
I'm
is?
open for whatever goes. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No big
yeah.
deal.
You know, it's obviously as simple as, well, pay attention. Let's get your head out of your phone. Look up. You know, these predators that are out there, and they're looking for the weakest of the herd. That's what the animals do. They look for the weakest and the slowest. If you got your head in your phone, or you look like you're meek, instead of walking upright with confidence and, making scanning eye contact, those guys are the last ones the predators go to. The ones that look weak or distracted, they're the first, because it's all about surprise. Most predators, someone said it the other day, the mountain lion getting that slow deer, he doesn't want to get hurt. He doesn't want to get in a fight. He's just hungry. How do we teach situational awareness? It sounds simple, but I don't think that it really is.
Well, I think one of the cool things that out of conversations, and that's why I call these guys my mentors. Like I didn't train physically with Ed Hart. I'd given him my videos and said, well, "Hey, what did you think of this?" Oh, damn, geez, dude. Next thing you know, I got a 2.5 hour conversation on how I laid out the Cooncow video, integrated Jesse's trapping, and he didn't want it presented, but I cross-referenced the concepts of non-classical gung fu and some of his technical elements into Filipino martial arts, and you can see that it's directly associated to it. But I tied it to modern Arnis, or to Arnis in general, and I did it with a stick. But it's the same principle. So Jesse really couldn't say, "Fuck! I thought I said I didn't want people. I didn't want it on video." Well, Ed's like, "Hey, man, look at the shit that Kelly put together, blah, blah, blah," that type of thing. So, how you go about it. But one of the things that Ed said was the beauty about children is they haven't been adulterated yet. And it really comes down to, we make people stupid because they ask a question because they're inquisitive, and then we say, "Oh, well, never mind, ask your mama. Oh, that doesn't involve you," and so on and so forth. But any other time, "Oh, don't profile people." Well, now it's some kind of weird, twisted social thing, whereas before, "Hey, don't talk to strangers," you know,
Yeah.
and then we find, "Oh, you should be more friendly." Oh no, the reason my dog doesn't want that guy petting him is the same reason we shouldn't be around him. We should sense those same things that the dog does and be leery and cautious. And so we kind of make people susceptible to violence by going, "Oh, hey, I hate to be politically correct, but we are in a survival mode in our society." I mean,
Absolutely. Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Regardless of why, and I actually
yeah,
wanted to go there
yeah,
at some point, was it doesn't matter why. It's there. 10, 15 years ago, we could reasonably say, yeah, what do you need to train a machete for? You're never going to experience that. Well, that's not the case anymore.
yeah,
Knife violence is at what seems to be an all-time high since the invention of the firearm. We can't discount what happened before that, sure, but
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
it's out there, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I wrote an article on our responsibility to take care of ourselves, to do something for our own survival, because no one else can do it for us. You
yeah,
know, and so I'll head into that. Um,
yeah.
we can't just play around these days. So for the experienced practitioner or even the layman, what should they concentrate on these days, or what should the layman look to get into if he wants to take care of himself?
Well, again, allowing yourself to reconstitute or reactivate your instincts. If the hair on your ass is standing up, or something feels quirky or weird, or sounds too sweet, to be real, again, society has made us ignorant, and we've been complicit. So
Well, society seems to have taken that responsibility out of our hands in the sense of, I'm sure you remember, you'd go to school and you could bring your 22 and join a shooting club, archery club, fencing club, boxing club. And what's left today? Wrestling.
yeah, yeah,
And it seems to have
maybe,
been, exactly, it seems to have been a systematic elimination. I mean, you can still find these things, but you've got to do it on your own. The government, etc., the education system isn't going to throw it your way at all.
yeah,
I mean, right
yeah,
down to the point where I took a class in high school called Single Survival. You learned how to cook, clean, do your bills, pay your taxes, find a job. I don't think that's taught anymore.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh no, you want to be dependent? Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
fuck.
But we're responsible for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
And who's doing it? They're in charge of our education system. Are you kidding me? You know?
When you went to school, all these things existed. When I went to school, one of my junior high was in rural Connecticut, so there were shotguns in the trucks and whatnot. But still, none of that stuff was available. You had wrestling,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
Even in college, I mean, you can't even fence unless you find a club, if that college has a club. When we talk about situational awareness, I think the next thing that's going to happen in any encounter is that tachypsyche response to fear, the tunnel vision, the I'm now frozen and I can't move or think straight. How do we, as martial artists or anyone, is there a way to work out of that in the moment to assert that inner calm so we can think and move and react?
Really kind of comes back down to that instinct of allowing our raw essentials to be activated. Go ahead, and then having the willingness to respond. As opposed to being frozen. Even if it's just like, oh, um, it's Napoleon Dynamite moment. I just got to run. You know, uh, and realize that that's a survival tool that society's trying to take away from us. Young girls and shit. Classic example is these goddamn um, trains in New York, and one asshole creating problems, and everybody's just frozen. To to won't make a move, won't step in to protect. You know,
Mm-hmm.
two guys could resolve that real fucking quick.
Yeah.
And one creates a distraction, the other cold cocks the son of a bitch and throws him out of the train. I running or not, moving or not. But yeah, and unfortunately, I think, and fortunately, I think people are getting to the point that okay, we've had enough of this shit. So
Yeah.
um, I do have a concealed carry. There's stores that like Costco that don't want you carrying your gun in your store. Well, it's concealed carry for a reason. So unless you're gonna fucking metal detect me and frisk me before I go in,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still carrying it. You know,
Yeah.
I worry about. I don't go to movie theaters too much anymore. If I do, I go to one where there's nobody. It'll be on a Wednesday in an early matinee because it's something I think I really wanted to see, but
Right.
I don't want to go on Friday night and the theater is packed. And even if it isn't one of the patrons, it's somebody that's looking to make an example.
Yeah.
and they just want to create fear. Same thing with the grocery store or anything else. Ed Hart, he always talked about, he goes shopping and, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and, nobody's around. And you know what the first thing I put in my cart is, Kel? I'm like, no, what? He goes, canned goods. I said, oh yeah, I try to stock in up on those. No, he goes, it's like a spiral football, man. You can be real accurate with it.
Hmm.
So it's a projectile. And so, I mean, always allowing, and he just allowed me to think.
Hmm.
So just that sharing that little bit of information, you know, he allowed me to think, and uh, as impactful, or it's like, oh, well, why didn't I think of that? Really made me just kind of go, I'm always thinking about that, and always share it. And,
Yeah.
and it's you know, obscure enough to really go, huh, yeah. When you think about it, man,
Hmm.
standard can of pork and beans would really fucking take somebody out.
Yeah. Lock and load your first 16-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah. But we become so used to watching the bullshit on TV that you can't even go to the grocery store without hiding behind different aisles and
No,
wondering who this is and what that is, and
you
you
know,
know.
it
I
really
mean, so
stinks.
our awareness.
Yeah. I went to the movies recently. You spoke about that. I went and saw Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair on the night it opened, Friday night. And it really stank that it was a real concern for me. Should I carry tonight? With all the weird violence. So now here we go. I'm going to an ultra violent movie in these times by myself, by the way. And,
Yeah,
you know, I don't like that we have to think that way to that extent, but we do. I mean, the
yeah,
head
yeah.
has to be on a constant swivel. You look for the egress as soon as you walk into a room. Don't stop your car 2 feet from the car in front of you. Stop enough that you can turn and get away. You know, and I learned that one from the big bad streets of Hartford.
Sure.
And because
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
do that.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's just we always have to be out there. So I think the situational awareness, the whole knife attack thing is it's out of hand.
Yeah,
And we all need to do something. Now, obviously, I think the best thing to do is not be there. I've
yeah,
got no
yeah.
problem running.
Unfortunately,
If I have
yeah.
nothing, even if I have something, and you've got a knife, I just want to quit the area. You can call me a chicken when we're done. That's okay. I'll be an alive chicken, you know. And but then sometimes you can't get away, and
Well, sometimes at the same token, you're that guy has created a reason for you to be aware of. So now your bodyguard 24/7 mindset is relevant. Now it's like, oh, well, I don't know. It seems like you kind of targeted that lady. Um, I'm in a position because I'm always back of the theater, um, positional control, so I can see who's coming in, who's going in. There's not a entrance or exit behind me, that type of thing. And yeah, it's inconvenience to be that far away from the premier shot, but I, I, I don't like motherfuckers behind me at a bar, at a bus,
that wall is
anywhere.
always to the back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm walking the parkway with the dog. I don't want somebody. I'll just move off and I'll control my parameter completely around me. You know, I don't like walking past homeless dudes that are lurking on benches or anywhere else that could lunge off and just shank me in the kidney once or twice. I mean, there's just a lot of weird things that I think about. I got a little Staffordshire, real, which is in essence kind of an expensive little pit bull, baby pit bull,
Okay.
and I could just see, one of the homeless dude lost his dog and go stab that guy. It's a pretty secluded area of the park. Stab that guy, just doesn't have to kill me. Just stab him in the back or in the kidney or something. Well, he's collapsed. Take his dog. You know, and his wallet. I just don't trust fucking people.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And hopefully those people around me are aware enough of that too to, you know, but again, I would, you know, last out the movie just to make sure that this guy didn't stab somebody, like, yeah,
Yeah.
Bill situation.
Right.
Just something about him, motherfucker might have a fucking trench coat on in springtime. It's like, oh yeah, what's underneath that coat?
Right.
You just don't, something just don't seem right about it.
Yeah. Maybe there's nothing
So
underneath that coat. Ooh. You
yeah, yeah.
know. So
But
yeah,
just awareness, I think.
I want to talk about your travel wrench.
Oh yeah, sure.
Um, a force multiplier can make anybody a warrior. But I guess, there are people out there that won't go and get the gun and they won't go train in the knife. Let's talk about the travel wrench, how it came about, and how people can
Yeah,
use it.
yeah, yeah. Well, uh, me and Keating were doing a lot of knife stuff when other people weren't necessarily doing that. And or we're more secretive about it. So we're far from the first guys doing stuff, but we did go a little bit more mainstream than a lot of the other people, and it was timing, I guess. Uh, Prices pushed it for me because, like I said, I'm sitting here next to Fort Lewis, next to the Air Force Base, and next to the Naval Base. So take advantage of soldiers and military men who will need knife training. Well, so I created the travel wrench for squeamish people that didn't want to do knife. So if you really look at the travel wrench, it's a reverse grip knife, but it's a karambit. It's an impact karambit. So I don't have to cut anybody to learn how to utilize the body mechanics and dynamics, universal angle, universal um, symbol. So plus sign, times sign, circles, connect the dots, that type of thing. And yeah, that was the reason I created the travel wrench, was to teach people how to do knife without having to do knife.
Right.
And then I correlated it by that. Filipino martial arts all the way. Could be standard grip, could be reverse grip, it's counter knife, it's improvised weapons, that type of thing. So it was really a covert idea and principle that you could do if you're boxing, you could do if you do karate, you can do if you do judo, jujitsu. Um, Jeff Berger, Coach Berger, he's off the East Coast. We haven't met. He just bought a lot of my videos and things like that. He said he despises fist loads. I said, well, have you tried the travel range or the safety range? He's like, no, I haven't. I just don't, I can do improvised weapons. So I sent him a couple of them. And he's like, damn, I like these because I can grapple with them. They don't get in my way. They don't impede any kind of concepts or movement. I just integrate it straight into it. So, again, here you got, I've had guys say, oh, yeah, that looks like a waste of time. Maybe if it was made in titanium. I'm like, oh, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I said, I'll make you one in titanium. Shit, I'll do it for free. But I want you to videotape you taking a couple hits with that plastic one. Take a shot on the arm, take a shot across the jaw, a straight punch to the chest. You know, just tap yourself on the forehead. You know, just tap yourself on the bone.
Yeah.
You know, shit talkers that have got an opinion about every fucking thing, but they may be really skilled technicians too.
Right.
But I wouldn't take them to a fight with a Girl Scout group. You know,
Hmm.
like, yeah, I just don't think you got the hair on your ass that you got coming out of your mouth. So, but yeah, uh, force multipliers. That's kind of really what it what it is, you know,
And in the design and training, did you make it for experienced martial artists, or can my sister use
uh,
this?
plus, yeah, it's just plus sign. The safety wrenches, see, there's some ergonomics to the travel wrench.
Uh huh.
You know, you got to have a reasonable, strong grip and wrist area. So, learning the biomechanics. So a hammer fist is ideal, but you go to the vertical fist or the straight punch, well, the probe can twist or angle off and that type of thing. But you use a safety wrench, shit, that hurts like a motherfucker, you know. And but yeah, of course, I came up with these travel wrench about 30 years ago. You know, I was just making them out by hand. It wasn't until I got in an auto accident in '97 that the dexterity, because I was just cutting them out of plastic and then sanding them, drilling them, doing all that stuff. And then I'd make 20, 30, 40, 50, depending on the size of the seminar, and then I'd give one away free. Had my son helping me with it, doing different things like that. And then I got hurt. Both my hands and my neck was kind of messed up, bulging disc. And so that's when Tim Wagner from Blade Tech, we went to high school together. He's like, hey, man, I can't believe you're still making those. Why don't we do an injection mold? I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And so that's when and then that one was the DTL, the Destroy Trap Lock. And and it was an impact karambit, right? That was before the karambits were coming. I gave the handmade one to Steve Tarani and Ernie Emerson, and
Hmm.
Shomer Tech wanted me to do a bladed version. I was like, we're having trouble not being, you know, having our knives, our 4-inch holders taken away from us. So I'm not going to put together a karambit blade, like my travel wrench, and turn that. First of all, a karambit in the right guy's hands, you ain't going to disarm that guy.
Right.
You know, I mean, so conscientiously, I was trying to provide something that was kind of a hit and run type of option without having to, you're a bodyguard 24/7. In my training methodology, that starts with legal ramifications, because if we go to jail for whatever we did, now our house payment is going to the attorney. Our house payment's going to the bail bondsman. Our house payment's going to a civil lawsuit or, that type of thing. And so how am I protecting my family? I can't make the house payment. I'm
Right.
in jail. I can't go to work. Boom, 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 boom. So if you're really a bodyguard, it's deterrence and avoidance, and you know a lot of things that you have to process through that. You
Yeah.
know,
I read somewhere that the travel wrench is legal to carry on the airlines. It's TSA approved. Was that
well,
something that you had to work on, or is that not the case?
no, 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 no. I don't believe that is the case.
Okay.
I believe it's in the FBI improvised weapons, and Keating would remember this because he's a steel trap. I went through a real bad bout of cancer, kidney failure, created kidney failure,
Hmm.
and so I went through all this chemo. I was on dialysis for almost 2 years, and the chemo, several of them gave me neuropathy, all kinds of shit, man. I was just barely existing, and came down to you need a bone marrow stem cell transplant, or the chemo's not going to keep this cancer
Oh
to it,
my.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
So you get so much chemo, there's a thing called chemo brain, and it's like dementia. And I didn't know I never even heard it. There was a T-shirt in there I was going in to get my chemotherapy infusion, and there's this T-shirt that says, "I got chemo brain. What's your excuse?" And I was just like, "What the fuck? What's that about?"
Right.
He goes, "Well, hasn't your wife said something to you about like you forgot this or you forgot?" I said, "Yeah, but I think she calls that selective memory." She goes, "Yeah, I think she's just being kind to you, but chemo brain is kind of a dementia Alzheimer's thing because when you have excessive amounts of chemotherapy, it fucks with your memory and does shit like that, So I try not to make too much of it when I don't have total recall on shit, Um, so this dude contacted us. You bring it up to Keely. I know he'll remember the guy's name because this guy contacted us and befriended us. I'm writing an article. I'm doing this. And boy, I'd really like to do a review of your travel wrench, a review of your Stinger, and other people had different items. Yeah, he did a review on it in a fucking FBI covert weapon manual.
Whoa.
So he punked us all off, as if he was our friend,
Yeah.
doing us a review. And, hey, man, we have very few things that we could actually use. If anything else, I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of people tell me, fuck, I carried that over India. Belton travels from Thailand to the Philippines to, India, Mexico, Spain. He's got it on the outside of his carry-on bag. Just got it velcroed to the outside in plain sight.
Wow.
He take it out, has got his key on it, throw it on the coin rack. They'll pick it up, look at it. It's because they don't know how to fucking use it. But I go on a flight. I'm just going over to Eastern Washington. I think I was going to Spokane or something, do a seminar, and threw it in the train, tray for change and stuff like that. And the guy's like, "Oh, geez, Mr. Worden, I was hoping you would test me." It was a former military guy working in, TSA, and he knew what it was.
Right.
And he goes, "I can't let you take that on board."
Oh, man.
But, at the same time, I had another gal, she's got it in her back pocket with the book. And she's going, yeah, where was she going? She's going over to Germany or something like that. And it's in her back pocket. She's got the small manual in her back pocket. Nobody's thinking one thing about it. They didn't frisk her. It ain't metal, that type of thing. So, but, surefire, flashlight, anything like that, Sharpie, just so many different, heavy rat tail comb.
Mm-hmm.
I carry a bandana when I fly, just in case.
Yeah. Well, one of my students, acupuncturist, he carries a spare pair of socks and plastic spoon and a container, small can of quick open tuna fish. It's really a fucking sling. It's a sock load, but he's almost diabetic. He's got to carry tuna fish on the thing and a plastic fork, and geez.
Quickly, you have a flail.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's just you just kind of realize the how you need to go through things. And
well, to all my listeners, it may or may not be legal to carry the travel wrench through TSA.
Yeah.
I walked
But
into
again,
I had given
see it all the time.
my fiance at the time. I had given her my Gerber boot knife because a guy was in her car ripping it off when she left my apartment one night. And so I gave her the knife. I was like, "Here you go. Here's some self-defense." And she brought me to the airport. And this is back when your family could follow you all the way to the gate. Right at the bottom of her purse is my Gerber boot knife. And they're obviously like, you can't bring that. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to lose this blade. So I was young, I was spry. I ran all the way out to the parking lot where her car was, and I ran all the way back. I wasn't losing this blade at all. But it's crazy, the things. I mean, we have to take off our shoes. Okay, here's something for you. I have flown out of the Walla Walla airport about 11 times since 2015. So for the last 10 years, I've flown out of there 11 times. Each and every time, I am randomly selected to have my stuff gone through. And the last time I did it, I said, okay, this is profiling. I'm done with this. They're like, what are you talking about? And I told them what I just said to you. Oh, no, this is truly random. I said, no, it's not, as they're taking my brand new water that I bought 15 feet away from a machine, because I can't have that either, right? And, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1". I have a beard, long hair, you know. But actually, when I started flying, I didn't have the long hair. That's a new feature. But it's a bit annoying, and I really do feel like I'm being profiled. So I never attempt to bring anything on. It doesn't happen at other airports, just Walla Walla at the airport. So I don't
Yeah,
ever bother trying anything other than the bandana. They're never
yeah,
going to
yeah,
question your bandana. So I've got one for
yeah.
self-defense and one for first aid, right?
Well, I've come up with all kinds of things. It's uh, a wrench for a carburetors for an Austin Healey, side draft carburetors for an Austin Healey, all kinds of things. But bottom line, what it comes down to is I can't lie. So I don't even try. So I just know I can make anything an improvised weapon. When I was training with for Special Forces, I did get a contract to go down to DC to do a improvised security program for office personnel um, for an alphabet group. And first thing we did was we went shopping at Office Depot. We went shopping, non-magnetic stuff. Uh, Even at a hardware store, how to how to set ourselves up with improvised stuff, how to make your briefcase, how to, you know, use magazines for body armor, how to do a lot of different things. And so, so that was the weekend program was how to, select our pens and pencils and visual deterrence and, that type of stuff.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about your when you taught the special forces. Did you create a system for it, and do you still offer that to them?
Well, no, I'm 73 now, and I unfortunately, I, I made it through. God, I started in 2000. I started before that, but I took the long-term contract in 2000. Had that up to 2006. Colonel Went came in 6'7", 6'8".
Wow.
He decided he wanted to teach the first special forces group type of thing. And, I literally said, oh, excuse me, sir, what does the strategies and techniques of a 6'8", 245-pound guy have to do with teaching, you know, first SF guys that are 185, maybe 200 pounds, 6 foot, 6'1". I mean, trying to be nice.
Yeah.
My program was highly regarded and accepted, and you know, for years, and so I just didn't understand what 6'8" guy who wanted to do grappling, you know, and he came up with a program called the defang the serpent, something like that.
Okay.
Supposed to be defang the snake,
Right.
that type of shit. But
Make it
it's just a
your own.
weird twist of fate, and the main teams didn't want anything to do with the guy, you know. Because who wants to wrestle with a 6'8"
No one.
guy on concrete and shit like that, and Colonel General Tony, when he was in charge of USASOC, he had hired uh, Chief Warrant Officer Lawrence Jordan to go to all the SF bases and assess and evaluate what's being taught. And I was teaching machete, I was teaching tomahawk, I was teaching knife, I was teaching impact weapons, and there was only a few of us that were doing that. So when the evaluation assessments came out, basically they said, get rid of the jujitsu. It's kind of a bullshit thing. And not that it is, it's just that jujitsu by itself, well, yeah, golly. So, I was doing a program before with Rangers, and Captain D. McCowan was in charge of that. Hoyce and Horian had rolled out there, and they charged the Rangers $18,000 for a week's worth of grappling. Well, command got a little pissed off about that, so they brought Cap McCowan in. He came to me, and he'd been training with me at different times. He said, "Hey, man, command is upset. Would you come out and do teach some knife?" And he'd already told me that Gracie'd got 18 grand for a week. And I was like, "Well, yeah, okay, man. I'll come back out 3 days. How about $3,500? And 4 hours a day or whatever. I'll bring a team of guys." And oh well, Gracie's pretty much milked us for everything we had for our combatives program, and how's 2 grand or something like that. I didn't want to I just said, "Hey, I'll tell you what, I'll come out and teach for free." I said, then the next time you guys want a fucking program, you pay me what everybody else is getting. And not that I needed $18,000 for a couple days of work,
Sure.
And so I said, I'll just teach for free. And whatever you were going to pay me, give that to the Disabled Veterans Family Fund. And then you let me know how much of that $18,000 they donate to the Disabled Veteran Family Fund. So I already had a chip on my shoulder when I went out there. And there's Hoyce and Horian, there's about 40 Rangers. And I step out, and this Mr. Worden, and he's going to teach some knife, So they're all barefoot on the mats and all that bullshit. Even when I'm on mats, I don't go barefoot. I don't do barefoot fucking martial arts. I don't care if it's it's a religious sanctuary, man. Everything's barefoot. Fuck that, I got a gun on my hip. But I stepped up in front of the group and pulled a live blade off my hip, and I says, "All right, 3, you motherfuckers, step up here and show me I'm a third world operative and I'm non-compliant. 3, you guys step up here and show me how you're going to wrestle this fucking knife out of my hand." And then they all just kind of looked at me, deer in the headlights. So I said, "Okay, do me a favor. Pull your finger out of your ass and point it at me like it's a gun. And because you guys are soldiers, and I got a knife and I'm non-compliant, shoot me." And that's how I started that class off. I wasn't popular. Hoyce and Horian didn't smile in the group photo. And I didn't, and I'm not being malicious. And I also said, I'm an American. I don't have a style. Style is to get laid. I literally said that. I said, if you find yourself barefoot, getting ready to roll around with an assailant, and you're wearing pajamas, well, you should have a gun by your headboard, And if you're hearing shit, then get ready to shoot some motherfucker. If you're jumping out the window to avoid them, well, you must be banging somebody else's old lady. See, the scenario ain't wrapping up. I was trying to be a smart ass,
Right.
but trying to do it in such a way that it's a logical thing. If I'm hearing shit, I'm not going to go wrestle with the motherfucker in the house I'm at. I'm going to have my fucking sidearm and my fucking Glock, and I'm going to do a room clearing. that type of stuff. I even said something to the fact, yeah, man, if you're fucking barefoot, wearing pajamas, and there's somebody sneaking around in your house and you can't shoot them, you can crawl out the window. Sounds like you're Greg Allman. Yeah, it might be your old man. I don't know, but I'm
Right.
getting the fuck out of here. I mean, I think I was too old. They're like, Greg, who? You know, yeah, dude was married to Cher for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's.
Well, let me ask you a question. Um,
Yeah.
you are obviously not the first or the last guy to go in there for the military contract and teach them a few things. The Gracies, Vunaks, many other people. My question is this: do you have any insight? Are they just doing the military's concept of we're always looking for the best way to do something, or do you think that they're collecting their own version of their Jeet Kune Do that they're compiling internally and teaching when you aren't there?
Yeah, it depends on who the team leaders are. So here's one that'll fucking make people choke and stagger and cut back was, and I don't know if I'm going to put it on Cap McCowan,
Mm-hmm.
but it came through the grapevine that a lot of these guys, the Gracies, put together a deal and said, hey, man, you're a really good practitioner, you're a team leader. If you set this up to where you're bringing our program into, your unit, uh, when you retire, we'll be guaranteeing that you're making a six-figure income teaching a Gracie jujitsu school. So, in that special, when everybody else has to go through special education, military training school or college, and choose a select occupation to study, you know, here's the Gracies offering something that's worth six figures, but at the same time, you know, they're outside looking for knife and they're taking different firearm courses and stuff. So jujitsu ain't going to be the bread and butter of everything that they think, but they're going to build a system around that because potentially, even though it could endanger other soldiers' lives, I'm going to take the bread and butter, integrate that into my program, and I'll be making six figures, even though there's some things that maybe not complete about this system that we're teaching. It doesn't sound like you're endangering other soldiers for a promised fucking financial bonus when
Right.
you get out of the military. That's what it sounded like to the guys that were explaining it to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of crazy shit, man.
Well, it sounds
I
like
had
you
a
had a.
situation, huh?
No, go ahead. You had a situation?
Oh, I had a situation. Oh, there's been quite a few. Some were pretty humorous, but anyway. So I had a radio show here in Tacoma, Lakewood, Washington, called On the Edge, and of course,
Uh-huh.
one of the reasons was I did a lot of radio for the police report, the military report, and then they said, "Hey, man, you roll pretty good on camera or on live radio. Improvise and just." I always started out with, I'm not now, never have been a television actor or a radio celebrity.
Mm.
So let's go. This is live, baby. Make it happen. And because it was AM radio, I just had to make sure I wasn't cussing and swearing. And,
Yep.
so I can be somewhat politically acceptable uh, if I'm conscientious of it. So anyway, had a UFC type of event coming here to the Northwest at the Tacoma Dome. And so I interviewed a pretty well known fighter, uh, and he was putting the show on. So I interviewed him, talked to a couple fighters, and we talked about the event coming. And and he says, "Oh, are you going to the SHOT Show?" I goes, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "Well, Dan Severn's going to be there, and he's doing a UFC there. Maybe you can interview him um, after his fight, and he could promote the show we got coming in Tacoma. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So I just talked to Dr. Brett Jacques, the late Dr. Brett Jacques, street sambo, his former ranger and a rugby player and a sambo player, and he used to wrestle with Dan Severin at Michigan. So he goes, well, hey, if you see Dan, tell him I said hey, and I'm like, oh, okay. So never met Dan. There he was standing at the Benchmade booth at the knife. He was signing autographs and shit.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing a sport coat, got my travel wrench on my hip on a little Kydex holster thing, and I walk up to Dan. I reach my hand out, and he reaches out for it. I hand trap him with my left hand, draw my travel wrench, hand trap him twice, got him foot trapped, his hands pressed against his chest, and my travel wrench under his jaw, and he's teetering on his heels. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, it's called assault, Dan. Serious fucking assault. And he goes, and then I stepped back and I went, Kelly Worden. He barely shook my hand. I just fucking with you. He goes, oh, I thought you were real, man. I goes, no, I just fucking with you. And so if it was real, I'd spit in your face and slam your head in that glass display case. And he feeling the edge. He's like, that'd really mess you up. And he goes, yeah. I just won my 11th world title, but I've never been in a real fight. And I says, well, that's kind of my beef with you guys. I teach self-defense. I don't teach sport. So I'd appreciate if you sport guys wouldn't teach police and military sport, telling them it's real. I said, get a guy in real trouble. And he goes, and then I said, something. What did he say? He goes, you need to switch to decaf, he said. I said, yeah, but you guys need to switch to fucking reality.
Right.
I said, if this was real, I'd just wait for you to come out of the gym over there with your world champion belt hanging over your shoulder, tackle your ass and slam you into the concrete, pull my boot knife and shank you. I said, people, you never know why somebody's mad at you, or wants a piece of your ass, especially back in the early UFC days.
Yeah.
A lot of shit's happened in the hallways and the elevators, after certain matches had occurred,
I was actually at the fight at Mohegan Sun when they tore the place up and were kicked out.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Fight. Yeah.
Yeah, shit happens. So anyway, I, kind of soothed that over and said, hey, man, I know you're coming to Tacoma. Would you like to do the interview for the radio show, promote the show, and the UFC? Oh, yeah, I'd do that. And so we did the interview, and I called him on it. I said, yeah, let's see, what else did I tell him? When he told me he'd never been in a real fight, I said, well, hey, I'm heading up to Calgary. It ain't that far off from where you are. You owe it to yourself to come up to Calgary. Maybe shave that mustache so nobody identifies you, and we can go to a couple bars. I said, they won't stab you, won't shoot you, but we'll probably get in a little fisticuffs. Well, that's not going to happen, and I kind of snickered at that. So anyway, I did the radio show. I was back here in Tacoma, and then scheduled to go, and I was getting a divorce at that point in time, and so I was on that dating line, and I had a date with this lady out of Nowhereville, and she hated men. I don't know why she was dating. I miss my wife, but I just wanted to get laid, or I wanted some female accompaniment,
Right.
And so I went and had coffee with her, and I could tell already she was miserable as hell. And next thing you know, I get a phone call. We're sitting there having coffee, and a dude named Ronnie Cash, and he was Washington State president of the Hells Angels, and he used to train at my school. My daughter was working at his tattoo shop drawing Flash for him. She was only 17, so she couldn't do tattoo work, but she wanted to be around the tattoo industry, so opened that door. Anyway, he calls me and he goes, "Hey man, I'm sponsoring that. I heard your radio show. I'm sponsoring that event. So I got chairs ringside with card girls. You want to roll with that?" I'm looking across the table at this haggly bag, that's hates men.
Right.
And she didn't like martial artists either. She thought that scared you. What do you do? I teach martial arts. Oh, that sounds scary to be around. And I'm like, well, I kind of consider myself a protector, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just made that. I said, I got to go, man. There's just other things more important right now. I'll pay for your coffee. You take care. Have a good afternoon, right? And
Right. Well, what's
so
up with
anyway,
that?
so we walk into the Tacoma Dome, and there's Dan Severin. And so I was just like, "Hey man, I'll be over with you in a minute." So I walked towards Dan Severin. He was on the outside of his table, and he walks around cautiously to the behind the table and plants his left arm down on the table, and then reaches out with his right hand. And he goes, "Mr. Worden, how are you today, sir?" And I shook his hand and kind of pulled him a little bit.
Yeah.
He braced himself. I goes, "Oh, you remember my name?" "Oh, yeah, I looked up more than your name. Uh, just nice to hear from you. Nice to see you. I enjoyed our radio interview. Everything good with you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, man. Hope everything's well with you."
Yeah. He learns his lessons, huh?
Yeah. Do a little homework and know what's going on. It was kind of a chicken shit thing, play on him. But I was fucking around.
Yeah.
Again, I've seen that happen. I mean, me and Keating were at Soldier of Fortune, standing behind our booth, and a couple JKD guys rolled up on us, and they're like, "Hey, you Kelly Worden?" And I think that's about right around the time when the Renegade JKD thing came out, or something relevant to that. I mean, I was pushing that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Nucleus meeting, the first one, and sat with Taki and Linda, and was there with Jesse and Richard Bastilio, and I mean, everybody was there at that first one.
Yeah.
And I gave, there was a cover of Fighting Knives magazine that we did, and it was right after Brandon was killed, and we had access to the knife from The Crow.
Yep.
And so we took a picture of Brandon like like a shattered mirror, and basically ripped the picture up, and then laid the knife on top of it. So it was the shattered life of Brandon, the knife, and kind of a story. So we took that cover and we made it a poster. And, it was really cool. There was only 4 of them made. There was one that went to Greg Walker, Jim Keating, me, and Larry Hartzell at that time. So I had it, and it was all framed and all that shit. So I took it with me and I gave it to Linda, for the Bruce Lee Museum, and
nice.
So kind of crazy. But yeah, the Renegade JKD was just stirring shit up. That's pretty much about all it. And putting things in perspective. Tim Tackett says to me, "Hey, Kelly, where'd you get your Jeet Kune?" I goes, "I got the same place Bruce Lee did. I raped, robbed, and pillaged. I took whatever I want, and that's what my JKD is."
Yeah.
And when the neighborhood changes, so does the JKD. And that's truth. Adaptability, improvisation, and what's accessible to you. So you could add Savate, and you could add some real Box de la France. You could add all kinds of stuff that you have access to, like silver spoon. All the silver spoon special arts that Danny Inosanto has the ability to bring together. Lameko and Herman Suwanda, Edgar Solete, all the great practitioners that he has specialized. But I had a couple different motorcycle clubs. that I knew were pretty vicious and pretty ruthless. And then I had a lot of ethnic groups that I rolled in on the back streets of Tacoma that we could access and be around that were pretty violent. And and a fair share of young men that took criminal paths in life that did a little bit of time, but they're still my friends when they got out. We'd drink and we'd smoke some weed, or we'd do this or that. We'd maybe train and do some sparring. That's where my renegade Jeet Kune Do came from.
Right.
The art of survival. And the shit that happens in, Beverly Hills, that don't happen in Tacoma.
Yeah.
So, it's like, to me, that's honest and accessible. That's poor boy JKD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm paying my car payment, my truck payment, my gym payment, buying shoes for the kids. I'm not going out and going, hey, I think I'll go to a seminar, go to California, hang out in the sunshine for 2 weeks and learn Jeet Kune Do from, one of the Jeet Kune Do guys. Buy a pair of Jeet Kune Do shoes, Jeet Kune Do shorts,
The
Like,
yellow
fuck that.
sneakers, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I need
Yeah.
one of those yellow jumpsuits that I'd look like a fucking banana. So anyway, it's just like, yeah, it's pretty raw. You gotta be honest with yourself,
Mhm.
man.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. No,
we.
so there again, honesty, natural spirit is the closest thing I could come to it.
Mhm.
That distinction, getting back to one of the original questions, the distinction there, natural spirit means I do have people from all different systems and methods and stuff. Natural spirit's the umbrella thing. So you could bring in your Taekwondo, you could bring your Kaji Kembo, your Gojo-Ryu, your Shotokan, that type of stuff, and then use Arnis as an umbrella to help integrate anything you need from the system. So I got some senior guys in Taekwondo, and they've left the Taekwondo. They're no longer in that method. So if they still want to go in their Dan ranking, then I approach Dr. Yip out of Hong Kong, who's directly related into the Taekwondo, and get that guy his third degree in Taekwondo through an organization, or approach one of my other Kaju Kembo guys and bring him into that organization. And even though he's natural spirit, and because he's got his Taekwondo, he's got his Arnis, and he's got his Kaju Kembo, I can still give him an umbrella ranking if he's into that umbrella ranking because he's running a school, and get his fourth Dan, but he still wants his second or third degree in Kaji Kembo. So kind of do that. Then Worden Defense System was more or less the raw material stuff. Doesn't have the forms and things like that. I could take a defensive tactics guy and go, hey, I'm giving you baton, I'm giving you knife, I'm giving you riot stick, I'm giving you control tactics. You're getting your shooting from Mr. Bob Anderson, you're getting your shooting from Jeff Johnsgaard. Again, taken from the core group and it's applying to defensive tactics and strategies. So, then it becomes the guys that are more personally trained from me. And then I don't certify people per se. My students certify, or I don't validate people. That way I can't be bought and paid for. Hey, I came in, got 2 weeks of training. I want the VUNAC special. Yeah, here's $2,000. Make me since VUNAC's got the rat system, I got the cat and mouse system. So make me a certified instructor of the cat and mouse system. I paid you the $2,000. No, I don't do that.
Right.
You have to be at the Water and Steel or one of the group classes. They have to recommend you because you've kind of gone through the gauntlet of my instructor students, and they've validated you. It's because I'm going to be fucking dead. And instead of having a bunch of motherfuckers running around certified, this is what Kelly showed me. This is what Kelly, and then everybody else is like, no, I don't even know you. I never heard of you. That doesn't look like what we do.
Right.
But he's got a paperwork because I gave it to him. He bought it, So that's why I don't get caught. My students don't get caught up in people that just have paperwork and nobody knows each other and
Mm,
nobody respects each other and that type of shit. So
yeah,
anyway, kind of crazy stuff like that.
right. Well, I want to point everyone to your website. It's www.wardendefense.com. And there you can find the travel wrench, the silent fighter, custom knives. By the way, you sent me some pictures. I love the one called the Eternal One. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
also, you've got a series of DVDs. Can you give us any more information on any of these things, especially the silent fighter? I've actually designed my own dummy, so I'm curious how that came about, and is it still available?
Yeah, yeah, I still make them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do a production thing. It's like I got my knife shop on one side of the building here, and my gym on the other side, and the open area outside covered where I do the woodworking and dust and shit everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
flying everywhere. Um, but it's solid wood core. Basically, I needed a training dummy. I wanted a training dummy. Like I said, I first one I built I think was in 1980 because I had done some stuff with Dr. Yip, and he talked about the Chinese poles, like the Bagua poles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, hey, well, but I need something to stick with, and so I dug a hole in the ground and put some padding on, old carpet from behind the dumpster of the carpet store, wrapped it up, and then just used it for resistance training. And then I took beat up Arnie sticks or staffs, rattan, and I did crossed them on the body and then hog tied them on there with figure eight rope and that type of thing. And then I could do redondos on it and beat the sticks, carpet padded log, and that type of thing. And kind of refined it here and there. And people were like, "Hey man, can you make me one of those?" And I was like, "Dude, it's a log. It's got some ropes tied to it." And so, but I kind of refined it, and I got some stuff from the big toy, the big toys from the kids' playground and things like that. There was
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, the manufacturer was not too far from here. I went there and I was looking for pieces, and there was a bucket full of parts, and I was like, "Hey man, any chance I could grab a few of those?" "Oh, take the bucket." He goes, "That's still old shit, doesn't work, just throw it away." And got it home and redesigned it. So, now I make it, it's got aluminum pipe arms because you use steel pipe. It's too heavy and
Right.
it won't maintain structural stability. The arms will just hang down, that type of thing.
Because they
And,
move, right? They move up and
yeah,
down.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. They move up and down. Yeah, and then depending on how you drill the holes and the shoulder joint fixtures and stuff like that, they hop around. They slap around a little bit, so there's mobility and flexibility. The leg spins all the way around. It's a steel pipe, so it spins 360 degrees, so you can hook and sweep it and do all that shit. Everything, all the pipes are fully padded. Get the
Mm-hmm.
padding out of Alaska because Northwest doesn't need that thick of pipe padding. And
Right.
then use really heavy automotive vinyl and learn how to sew. So I got me one of those 1920, 30 Singer sewing machines that stitch just about anything. And so I learned how to, and I wrap the bodies in closed cell foam. So about different, three or four different kinds of foam. So like really thick, close to the wood, and real dense, tight cell, and so that cushions that. Then when you bring the foam out wider and wider to the outside wraps, you're using softer stuff, so it's not busting your hand. So you can pretty much pound on it and beat on it with a baseball bat or anything else.
Interesting. How do
Frame
you?
was huh?
I was
What's
going
that?
to ask about the frame and how you mount. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a wall frame. That's what I originally did, but then I wanted something more mobile. because I wanted it in my backyard. I wanted to drag it out of the gym and put it on the back deck, and
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So the old lady was at work. I stole her squat rack and went out in the back and got some 2x2 steel rectangle tubing and modified it so that it was a freestanding thing. She wanted a new weight rack anyway,
So
so
you were helping her. Yeah.
yeah. So I was helping her out, and yeah, I mean, and then I used wood slats to add the buoyancy in the spring on the body. Then did 2-inch nylon straps with quick release pins, and yeah, and all fits together. Now, there's a lot of little things in between. It takes me, I say I take an order and I say 6 weeks for delivery,
Mm-hmm.
but that's shipping and all the other things. So it's shipped in 2 crates. I gotta go to a friend of mine's body shop and salvage the like hood boxes and
Mm-hmm.
real big cardboard, because you can't get like 1/4-inch thick cardboard.
No.
So you got to find refrigerator boxes or stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you remake the crates, and that's kind of a complicated bullshit. There's metal work and there's woodwork and there's sewing and God, I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I've
but
seen it in
yeah,
action, and
yeah,
I love the concept of it, especially the movable arms. I've tried to
yeah,
create a
yeah,
number of things, even for fencing, and using
sure,
springs. Starting off on the original, what they call Mook Jong, the wooden
yeah, yeah,
dummy. We're only dealing with the second half of the arm attached to the shoulder, and these things don't move. And I get it in Wing Chun that the concept is to move you, not your adversary. And so
yeah,
that works to an extent, but at the same time, we need some sensitivity, you know,
sure, yeah.
and
Well, I always teach it because the arms are uh, 12 inches apart on the inside, so you're actually inside a center line. But
mhm,
that means you also got your mobility. You have to be able to shift to get to the outside. So really improves your stance work and your mobility work and that type of thing. You're shifting and you're bridging and those type of ideas. And
yeah,
then leverage factors kind of come into play. Uh, I look at it, or I explain it as, it's a big dude that don't want to move. So when you take that center line, you have to stimulate a response. So you're working on, if I press into it, it kind of rocks back, but it's going to come rocking back at me just like somebody else would.
hmm,
And so now you're trying to work on your sensitivity to activate a response, then shift away, draw it in, and then shift out, take advantage of that type of thing. So you you know you have to be able to put a resistance on the center line, but then ghost him when it's coming back out. You almost have to dissipate away and shift out. So it's a big dude that won't move. So
right,
we have to be able to move around him, and that improves your mobility and your response and your angles, and yeah, just a lot of different things. It teaches you how to teach yourself. And that's really what the principle of me creating it initially was. And then,
right,
of course, refining it after, that's 1980, and it's 26 now. I mean,
46.
yeah, that's 45. We'll give 45 years of, you know, working on this same kind of a concept and design. And yeah,
Wow.
and I don't move nearly as efficiently as I used to. Another thing was, one of the guy, Ray Bonsteel, had been with me for a long time out of Utah, and he had seen it in one of the original Full Contact magazines, and he's like, "Hey, man, I broke my neck. Uh, I want to keep training, but I can't let people fucking touch me." And so
Mm-hmm.
I made him a silent fighter, and schooled him. He'd come up for the camps a couple times, and gave him some private lessons, that type of thing. Went down, and did a couple seminars for him. Um, but he lets people touch it, or you can touch it, do once. I'll teach you a few things, and then that's my silent fighter. If you want one, order your own. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but his is 30 years old or more. You
Wow.
know, so and it still looks good. I'm looking at there's three of them in here, and they all look pretty good. One's at least 15, 16 years old, and that's with everybody, you know, pounding double stick drills on it, and manhandling it.
Yep.
I throw chairs at it, do shit like that. I'm not interested in, well, how's the frame holding up? It's a steel frame, and those are boards that I can break, that will break. And I did 3 silent fighters for a Wing Chun guy, master Wing Chun,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to have red or black leather or black material with red diamond threads. So I mean, he wanted this thing pretty,
Hmm.
and they still look pretty. So ain't nobody throwing a chair at that.
No.
It's all about technical movement. And he didn't even really. He got the DVD, but he had his Wing Chun and he had his vision on what he wanted to do. He's got 3 Wing Chuns. He's got 3 silent fighters.
Wow.
So
Multi-man.
a real pretty school,
Yeah.
and so I mean, yeah, and I don't know. I got an efficiency school. I don't, it's not about shit being pretty. Throw somebody against the wall, a couple pitchers fall down, glass breaks, pick the pitchers, put those in a corner, fix them a little later,
Yep.
that type of thing. But yeah, it's not. It's a fucking gem, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not about pretty stuff.
What about your custom knives? Do you still offer them?
Yeah, and they're usually sold before they're finished. I do take orders, but I mean, it's just me. I'm not a production. People say they really like what I do. I just say I'm not a knife maker. I'm an artisan.
Okay.
Each one's kind of an original thing. I don't actually, probably a little bit of my ADD or some other goddamn weird social disease that came from eating too much oatmeal as a child or tricks, silly rabbit tricks are for kids.
Yeah.
They'll give you a rare emotional disease. We got a medication for that. Bill Gates is helping us with that.
Mm.
But yeah. So each one is kind of a unique design, little thing. Pick your handle material. Tell me what kind of steel you want, that type of thing. You want Kydex sheaths, you want a leather sheath, and give me a month, 6 weeks to make it.
Mm-hmm.
I just ordered some Damascus from Salem. Was Salem Schwab. He was on Forged and Fire. He's out of Eastern Washington. He's won Forged and Fire 2-3 times. But yeah, I just ordered some Damascus from him. So should be getting that in the next day or two. And a specific, the guy wants specifically a Priceless Legacy.
Okay.
So but yeah, I know we negotiate the price based off of what steel and what Kydex and what sheath and which design and
Mm-hmm.
I mean I've got some knife maker buddies that give me tips. I mean that's how it happened. I got in that accident in 97, 98, and I had to close my gym and pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
And it was Ed Shemp or Ed Shemp and Tim Wagner from Blade Tech. Like, God, you're a miserable son of a bitch, man. Why don't you make a knife? And I was like, what? Yeah, here's a piece of steel. Here's a file. Here's some handle material. Make a knife. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I'll take that anger out on that. I was pissed. I couldn't teach, and that
Mm.
type of thing. That's kind of when the travel wrench went commercial. Went into injection molding because I couldn't do that. So I started making knives, um, uh, and then when I got the knife made, um, I went down to the Eugene Knife Show, and there was Pat Crawford, and there was Bud Neely. Um, Alan Elishewich was sitting in the conversation booth, um, very innovative maker himself. Um, anyway, so had Pat make me uh, my knife as a folder. Could you make me a folder of this one like that? And he said, "Yeah, I can do that, Kelly." And Bud Neely did a fixed blade version, and then through that, um, I was already doing the knife videos for Paladin Press, and buddy Mike Gregory. Mike Gregory is a friend of Jeff uh, Jeffrey Lewis. Jeffrey Lewis is a longtime buddy of Clint Eastwood's from the movie Every Which Way But Loose. He was the
Oh
uncle in
yeah.
Double Impact Von Damme, and his daughter's name is Julia Lewis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Julia's a kick in the head. She's wild and crazy chick. But anyway, Keating and I met Jeffrey Lewis. He was walking by our booth at the Soldier of Fortune. I said, hey, dude, you're like Clint Eastwood's buddy. And he came over and introduced himself. And I said, man, you look different. And he goes, yeah, I had a heart attack and I had to do something. So I started doing Muay Thai. And he's all kind of broader shoulders, pot belly's gone. He's looking real good. I said, hey, man, fuck, here's a copy of the magazine. Here's Full Contact. Here's Fighting Knives. Here's one of the videos for Keating. Here's a video for me. Yeah, man. It's really cool talking to you. Let's do some pictures. Gary O'Neill was there. That was Mikey Chanis's team leader, and Nom. Gary's a Golden Knight, uh, Hall of Fame, Ranger Hall of Famer. And great story from Gary. Uh, Beautiful dude. Eight tours of Nam, Central America. I had him on my radio show. He'd been shot a total of 8 times or something like that.
Wow.
So he'd been around. Of course, he's got some of those DOD stories too, where he's down in Central America and things don't always mesh with DOD and actually what happened. So here you have the written report. Oh, yeah, let's go by that. It's what they could give the media. But, the shit that he really went through, well, that's probably only known for the 2 or 3 guys that were on the team, right?
Right.
But so took some pictures, and Jeffrey disappeared. The next year, Mike Gregory shows up with another guy named Harvey Rice, and they're just like, "Hey, Kelly, hey, Jim, how you doing? What's going on? You going to be at the Paladin party later?" And, me and Jim are like, "These motherfuckers know us? Just play along, goddammit, just play along." So about a half hour into this conversation down a happy merry-go-round rabbit hole, they're like, "You don't know us, do you?" You go, "Well, no, but you fucking seem to know us, And
Yep.
so anyway, this is Harvey Rice. We're friends with Jeffrey Lewis. Harvey was stabbed in a home intrusion robbery. He was stabbed 13 times.
Ooh.
Guy had a butcher knife duct taped to his wrist or to his hand, and came into his house at 2 in the morning or some damn thing like that. And Mike was Dr. Rick Weber in General Hospital. Um, so, and then not only that, he was in Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lawnmower Man.
Okay. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, if you see the guy, he's everywhere. But mostly, he was the heartthrob of General Hospital for years and years and years. And every time you turn around, there he is in a different movie. Kind of like Jeffrey Lewis, one of
Mm-hmm.
those supporting actors that works all the time, where
Yeah.
big actors just work when they get paid the big bucks. Supporting actors get work all the time.
Oh, those
So
character
anyway,
actors, yeah.
Yeah. So Harvey was stabbed in this home intrusion, and um, Jeffrey gave Harvey the videos because he'd been stabbed. He goes, "You need to look these guys up." Well, Lukey had died recently, so we were pretty good friends. Stayed in contact with these guys. Um, After we did the Las Vegas party along, you know, uh, party on Garth. And then, so when Teddy died, Harvey invited me to come stay with him down in Beverly Hills. And he said, I'll take you to the funeral, and, Judo Jean LaBelle should be there, and, blah, blah, blah. He's part of that whole network. And so I go down there and visit him. And then shortly after that, uh, Nicole Simpson was murdered and Ron Goldman was murdered.
Mhm.
Well, Harvey was friends with the head of homicide because of him being almost murdered. And yeah, and he fought the guy back, even though he was stabbed 11 or 13 times. He fought the guy back and almost killed him with a ski pole. And that was with a punctured lung, and the 911. The whole assault was on recording,
Oh,
right?
horrible.
And so anyway, he's also played racquetball with Shapiro, O.J. Simpson's attorney. And and he didn't live very far from Nicole's house. And then we went from Nicole's house over to O.J.'s house and took a couple routes. Like if I was running like a raped rabbit to get to one location to the next, I'm trying to avoid anybody seeing anybody in the shadows and that type of thing. So
Right.
the next thing you know, I get the autopsy report from Nicole and Ron, and the head of homicide wants me to do a synopsis of what happened. So I took the autopsy report, used my ex-wife. I don't like the term ex-wife
Right.
or first wife.
Hmm.
You know, they're all important.
I struggle with that
Had
term as well. Yeah.
had two wives, and they were both really special gals. So anyway, I'm an asshole half the fucking time, but the women are good women.
Right.
But she lasted 25 years, so we had a good, strong relationship. So she played and she trained. So she played Nicole in scenario stuff, and blah blah blah. So it really kind of broke this whole thing down on how one or two people could have did that, and how two knives were used and two different strategies were used. Um, I mean, uh, Goldman came through the gate. There's a lot of stuff that people just don't know about. There was a private eye that was literally following Goldman and called OJ and told him that Goldman was heading to Nicole's house, and there was a little dog that was barking, and there were witnesses that seen the security or the private detective. But when the cops grabbed him, they held him over 24 hours without giving him his rights or attorney or anything else. So he couldn't be honest because they're holding him against his will, more or less.
Right.
Just some weird shit that occurred. So, um, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea that you were involved in that.
yeah, yeah. No, it was just interesting. Like I said, uh, Harvey was friends with the head of homicide, and how that kind of went down, and how I walked through that. So Goldman went through this short fence, short gate, and he appeared somebody was hiding in the bush right next to it. So when he comes through the gate, it's like somebody grabbed, you're a right-handed motherfucker. You grab this guy from behind. You got his chin pulled down. You got a knife to his throat. You're right-handed, and somebody grabs your arm and pulls your arm down. So the knife is on the left side of your windpipe, or your your windpipe.
Right.
Pulls that hand down. Oh, finger gets cut. You miss the windpipe, so you put it up on the other side. And you're not cutting the guy's throat. You're literally telling the motherfucker, like, yeah, you fucking my wife. Not for long, motherfucker. And he wasn't trying to kill him. So I registered those as taunt wounds. Like, you grab that motherfucker, you got his chin pulled up, your one finger's hooking underneath the jawline, a couple other, holding that mouth, holding that chin, and knife to the throat, grab that arm, pull the arm down into the knife, cuts that finger. The one that OJ had, and yeah,
Yeah.
the other side, the knife goes up to the other side. You're still immobilized because there's a knife to your fucking throat. Next thing you know, here comes a knife coming down at you. So, you're just holding this guy. Next thing you know, a different kind of knife. The one that the guy from behind was a double-edged knife, right? So he had cuts on his throat, but he was bumping his hands up against that knife, so the back of the knuckles were also cut up. So how would you do that if you had a single-edged knife?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
You get either cutting the guy's throat, or you're pulling, getting your finger cut, and then you're trying to find a reference point to where that knife is, so you could pull that knife down. And
Yeah.
then as you do that, here comes somebody directly at you, reverse grip, coming down on your face. And his face did get cut along his cheek and on the other side of his nose. Had these slash wounds, like lunge wounds, but they weren't big ones, but they were. But keep in mind, Goldman is a waiter, and he's got that. Uh, you know, that tensile strength, that, unbendable arm type of thing, but the knife is lunging into you. So he disengages and stabs the guy in the left thigh, into the thigh bone. And if that was you getting stabbed in the thigh bone, wouldn't you collapse to the left, which is like falling back in towards the gate? But he got pushed off to the side into the garden area. So he didn't collapse to the left, whereas if you got a Charlie horse in your left, you'd fall on the left. You got pushed off into the other side. And then then the blade cut through his abdominal area and cut across his chest and then across his throat. And then the other knife kind of comes in, and that was all single-edged knife, like a military knife.
Let me pause you there for a second, Kelly. Are
Yeah.
you saying that OJ or the murderer had two knives, or were there two
Yeah,
people?
there were two knives. There were two knives.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was using
And the
two.
autopsy report showed that there
Okay.
was a double-edged knife, and used hogskin test. Hogskin tests the same level of elasticity in the knife.
Hmm.
But some of the wounds, literally, like that disengagement and stab in the left, well, it's a single-edged blade. The bladed edge was away from going towards the back. That means a single edge. That would signify a reverse grip action. Same thing with kind of coming down on a hammer fist. The sharp edge of the blade was literally cutting the face, and then disengaged to the right, like a half C, right into the left thigh.
Mm-hmm.
And the blunt edge of the spine of the knife was, I mean, this is fucking uh, uh, almost 30 years ago now,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I refresh it every once in a while, usually if I'm teaching a knife class, and somebody will mention it, and then you go from one to the next, and you're kind of reenacting that.
Right.
Hey, do I have a female woman that likes to play Nicole? How about you, Johnny? you know. But so anyway, so now this guy's fucking killing Goldman
Mm.
and shoving him into the bushes. Well, Nick, let's just say OJ, OJ slipped around him while this other guy took command of that fucking frontal attack, slipped around him, and Nicole's running down the staircase. And it's one of those big, staircases that are 12-foot wide um, steps and plateaued way down to where, they're about 6-foot wide steps and 12-foot long steps. So the whole deck is 3 or 4 steps, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Okay.
And so she's coming down. Well, somebody's stabbing her in the stomach, and you can tell it's double-edged wounds, and the same hitting the hands. So the back of the hands are hitting, trying to push this knife down. So the double-edged knife is engaged. Plus, she's got these small probe wounds or taunt wounds. Get away, get away. Non-committal wounds, right? The ones on Goldman were definitely committed wounds.
Right.
Whereas the ones Nicole trying to keep her away were pushing her back, and she was trying to push down on the knife. She turns around to run back up the stairs, and this dude comes up. God. So, yeah. So, okay. So she does these taunt wounds to get away. She turns around and runs. This guy's in standard grip now, is what it would appear, and hammers down as she's running up the stairs. Hit her in the right rear uh, temple lobe or the back of the skull. She fell forward. The follow through of the blade catches down through the shoulder blade, almost through like the back of the collarbone down to the opposing to the left side. So he'd be right-handed stroke, and to the left shoulder blade. Well, you're a chick, your ass is a little bit big, you hit your head, you might have snapped it back, your ass takes over, momentum drops straight down, you scoop in, hook that fucking jaw with your left hand, cut her fucking throat, ear to ear, quarter of an inch into the cervical spine. Pull her into your chest as her weight pulls down. She's melted up against your chest. Your hands running up the bloody fucking mess of her face, and push it down between your legs. Stab her 2 or 3 times on each side of the clavicle. Then just throw a rag doll. Now she's facing away from her door front, so facing more towards the gate and the other area in a fetal position. Left shoulder up, I believe it was. And then somebody, after, now this is weird too. Now there's 3 little wounds on the shoulder, like a triangulation wound, double edged, not deep, and it would be like a probe wound. Like, is she dead? Stab, stab, stab.
Oh, jeez.
Like probe wounds. If you just slit her fucking throat, would you really need these weird triangle wounds to decide if she did? And then a follow-up wound, which was a single-edged, much more significant with greater depth, stab into the shoulder, and like, yeah, she's fucking dead. Let's get out of here, And again, there's footprints everywhere, blood everywhere. They never found the gloves. They never found the knife. I guess they did find the glove, one glove.
Right.
They never did find the knives. They never did find the shoes. Now how are you going to get her out of the house? Or, how you, a lot of little things, So you're a Hollywood celebrity. Who are you going to get to fucking murder somebody? Why wouldn't it a gun? It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have theories about what cultures, what knife organizations, what knife technicians would be in Beverly Hills, which would be accessible to do a hit on somebody, a silent kill. Who were OJ's connections? Who did he know? Well, he went to Hollywood, went to professional sports, and other people went to Vietnam. When they come back, what happened to them? People hated them. Their old ladies raped them for all the money that they had, divorced them, kicked them to the curb, made them very disgruntled, maybe drug related, and an opportunity comes up. So, there's Russian, there's Japanese, there's Chinese, there's Filipino, there's Mexican. Which one of those cultural group is going to get engaged with a, um, Hollywood celebrity?
Right.
And then there is a military guy, which has real potential to have some relativity. How do I know you won't snitch me off? I'll be a part of it. I'll get her out of the house. I'll do a getaway. Take the fucking police 3 hours, 4 hours out of the way. You'll be in fucking Italy by then. I mean, I don't know, man. You can romance this thing as deep as you want to go.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so shit like that. Maybe I spend too much time alone.
Well, you
But,
certainly lived an interesting life, and as we're
yeah,
coming to the end. Yep.
I did have that on the Mike Siegel talk radio show. Can't remember what year it is. I got a copy of that somewhere, but they did let 100 people call in after I did the show.
Okay.
I kind of did the breakdown, and there was 98 out of 100 that agreed with the fact that, well, it sounds more feasible than the bullshit that they were trying to feed you.
Right.
So yeah, it was interesting, and nothing I look for. This shit just happens, It's and and then again, that's part of you know building building your life out, being relevant to martial arts as a way of life, and the communications with all these different people, and how things happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just crazy.
I can tell we've only scratched the surface here today of who and what Kelly Worden is, and I certainly look forward to our next conversation. I want to point everybody to wardendefense.com, and if there are any more links that Datu wants to give me, I'll have them posted up when I post this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, mostly, I answered the phone, so my phone number is up there, and literally it could be anywhere in the world calling me. And it could be just somebody that's out of town, out of the country, and they, wanted to touch base, or it's one of the SF guys I haven't seen for 15, 20 years, and, two of them roll in and they want to do 4 hours worth of training, and, it's that type of thing. So, yeah, it is that. I mean, I'll leave this and, he'll probably feed the dog and then, come in and work on a knife. So, I don't have to leave the house. I'm kind of a recluse, and like I said about Ed Hart, he's the one that came up with the term recluse, and I said I kind of resemble that. If you don't mind, I'll use that.
Yep.
But real quickly, an instructor and a mentor. An instructor is there to give you step-by-step process of a system or a style or a subject matter. Whereas a mentor is there to feel your reflections or your reaction to specific stimulus, and then how to allow you to build and cultivate off that instinctively or reactively.
Yeah.
And then the end result of that mentor is helping you cultivate where your art needs to go. I mean, I share and I teach different martial arts, but I teach you to teach yourself. The greatest gift that we can give as a teacher, and there again, is sometimes to believe in your assessment or your analysis of movement, but then get some reactive stuff. Now, having that balance between a teacher is going to be the guy that shoeholes you into oh, you need to learn it this way. And Leo Gahe is a classic example of, not wanting people to mix with the Paquita Tercia. And, you really shouldn't be doing the Balintawak. You should be doing the Paquita Tercia, that type of thing.
Yes.
Belton Lubis is a classic example. He goes, I've been with Datu for 8 years, longer than I was before I met you. So I'm not leaving NSI. I'm not leaving Natural Spirit. He actually sent me to do Balintawak too, and now I'm doing Muay Thai and I'm doing BJJ, and those are things that he found those paths on his own, and so he can go and do. He just in the Philippines doing a big 2 week Paquita Tercia thing, and people were wondering, how do you know our shit? You haven't been in Paquita Tercia long. Well, I'm connecting the systems, and this is a link that came from Balintawak, and this came from Bastilio here, and Datu gave me that freedom and can motivated me to be creative. That's how when we hear those things that I want my students to be better than I am.
Right.
And and I see that. Keating gives me acknowledgement like I was his mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I just refused to take him on as a student because I felt he was more beneficial to provide things. Like the knife makes me pretty fucking psycho. If I pick up a knife, I just, I there's only, it is what it is. I get fucking dialed in, and so I kind of wanted to walk away from that. I had Bob Anderson was here before Keating, and then Keating came in, and then Joe Simonet, we let him in after that, and then there's been other people, but it was just basically Bob Anderson, me, and Keating. And I said to Bob, I says, well, let's bring Jim in, man. I said, his skill with the knife allows me to step away, and I can teach balanced martial arts. Because I teach knife through staff.
Okay.
I teach knife through the travel wrench. I teach knife through and sword through stick. And I can extract shit, give people, really, if we're doing knife, well, what do you think came first? Probably a spear. Because there was a lot of big things or things you didn't want to be close to. So you're learning how to use that spear and those body mechanics. And then when it comes to knife, what makes that knife function is the body mechanics, the positional alignment of how that staff works. If you then go from the spear end to the blunt end, now you're doing a spot of degas. And you're like, what? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, if you ain't finding that fucking connection, you're missing half of the foundational core of how these weapons became functional weapons. So yeah, but what the fuck? Just a crazy ass white dude living in T-Town. What can I tell you?
Yeah, well, we've been talking a long time, and like I said, I think we just scratched the surface. So I'm already looking forward to our next conversation. If you could hang on for a second, Datu, I'm going to say goodbye to
Yeah,
the people, and then we'll talk a little bit, and then I'll give you back your day. You've been
sure, man.
listening to By the Blade with Datu Kelly Worden. This has been a Spiral Studios production.